Happy Halloween and good morning, metalheads of the internet. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown, more specifically a brand new Albums I Missed video, and we're gonna try not to waste any goddamn time today because, oh boy, there were a lot of albums released in October of 2024. A lot of albums that I did not get the chance to talk about in any capacity, and a lot of albums that, therefore, I missed, and that we need to talk about here and now, today. Like, this could very well end up being the biggest Albums I Missed video I've done in a long time, maybe ever. Like, there's so much music to talk about, no time to waste. Let's just get right into it. First up, we have I Want Blood, brand new solo album from Alice in Chains singer and guitarist Jerry Cantrell. And if you know who Alice in Chains are, and you do, they've been nominated for 11 Grammys, they've sold over 20 million records, they got tons of hit singles, and you know who they are. If you know who Alice in Chains are, and you do, then you kind of know what to expect to an extent from I Want Blood. Lots of eerie, semi-monotonous, layered vocal harmonies and melodies and such. Lots of swampy, stewy, sludgy textures and riffs. It has a very dank, hot and humid kind of atmosphere and vibe to it. It's menacing and dark, and it does have these more upbeat and raucous moments. It's not a total, pounding, droning bummer in the way that, I don't know, maybe The Devil Put Dinosaurs Here from Alice in Chains is. And sure, maybe this doesn't make for the most original or intuitive or ambitious listen, but it does make for a solid one. I would say that this is actually a better produced and better executed record than the previous Alice in Chains record, Rainier Fog, which I thought was extremely mediocre and just underwhelming personally. It's immersive and heavy, and its blend of sounds and styles and beats and riffs means it can adapt to a lot of different environments. Like, I can picture myself getting stoned to this thing. I can picture myself playing this at a party or a barbecue or something like that. I can picture myself turning all the lights down low, drinking red wine, and just indulging in shadowy darkness and such. Not sure I understand why this needed to be a solo record. You probably could have just slapped the Alice in Chains name on this and called it a day, but hey, that doesn't really matter. It's a good record, and that's what matters. Check it out. Next up, we have Power Nerd, brand new full-length studio album from progressive rock and metal and music icon Devin Townsend. Maybe not as prolific as Alice in Chains and Jerry Cantrell, but much like those acts, if you know who Devin Townsend is, and you probably do, because you probably watch channels like this that talk about him a lot. I interviewed him a few years ago. I've sung his praises many a time. If you know who he is, and you do, you probably do, then you already kind of know what to expect from Power Nerd. Spirited, sprawling, massive, cinematic landscapes and soundscapes, huge, almost bombastic melodies designed to fill and swell arenas to their capacity. Devin has a knack for really switching things up and going into really crazy territory. That said, I feel like this is his most, laid back and least explosive and expressive record to date. It doesn't see him going into the absolute insane territory of something like Empath, and I also don't feel that it is as eclectic and as emotional and heartfelt as something like Lightwork. It is honestly fair to assume that by the standards of Devin Townsend and his body of work, that this is a more predictable kind of meat and potatoes record. That said, I mean, Devin still sounds great. I don't want to suggest that he's not putting his all into this, because he is. The production does a great job at making this feel very warm and immense and immersive. There's a lot of energy, a lot of love on display here. Much like I Want Blood, it's probably not going to win any awards for creativity, not in my opinion at least, but hey, if you like the artist in question, you're probably going to enjoy the album in question. Next up, we have Shining, brand new full-length studio album, the 9th overall, in fact, from Finnish metal crew Swallow the Sun. In the past, they've been typically described as a melodic death doom crew of sorts, but over the course of the last couple of albums, they've started to bring in more influence from gothic rock and gothic metal, and I think it's been mostly effective up until now. This album is not terrible, but it's not great either. Not in my opinion. I mean, look, this thing's been getting a pretty lukewarm reaction pretty much across the board, with most reviews just kind of in the middle, but leaning towards negative. With that in mind, I went into this really hoping to find something more positive, really hoping to have a more fulfilling experience. And, you know, I will say that, like, emotionally, sonically, like, mixing and mastering and production, there's nothing, like, objectively wrong or bad here. It is well put together, and it does have a clean, lush atmosphere and feel and finish. You know, like, some great crooning vocals across the board, lots of melancholy and gloom, and there's a lot of, like, great mournful riffs and, like, string arrangements. Like, it captures the vibe pretty well. The problem is the songs themselves just aren't especially interesting. It's very straightforward, very cookie cutter. The songs end up feeling, unfortunately, somewhat sterile and empty as a result of that. The fact that they are straying so far from those more brutal influences from Death and Doom is, like, really hurting them, because I think just having little bits and pieces of that here and there would do a lot to create some contrast and bring in some, like, extra color here, make this feel a little bit more powerful and poignant. But instead, we have an album that just kind of makes it feel as if maybe Swallow the Sun is going through the motions on this bad boy. They're just kind of phoning it in. I don't believe deep down in my heart of hearts that that really is the case, but that's what it sounds like on this album. Next up, we have The Wolf and the King, brand new full-length studio album from 1349. I've never really had any strong feelings for this band one way or the other, and this album isn't really doing much to really change my mind, but simultaneous to that, I concede I enjoyed this album a little bit more than I thought I was going to. Like, I was expecting a really generic, really basic black metal experience. To the band's credit, there's a good amount of variety in some of the riffage. It has a really dirty, kind of raw sound to it. I mean, raw black metal, sure, that makes sense. But I don't know, like, especially with those drums and some of these guitar tones, it almost feels more in line with, like, some death metal. And, you know, even some of the riffs have, like, a more jagged technical feel and flow to them. And you still get those blast beats, and you still get all those shrieking vocals and tremolo riffs, and, you know, it does have this more blackened death metal kind of sheen to it that I enjoy a little bit more and I appreciate a little bit more. The record does have an epic and dark feel to it at times, especially in some of the more ravenous and extreme bursts. Again, not really loving it, not blown away by it, but I did enjoy it, and I did get more out of it than I honestly expected, so I guess I would recommend it if you're looking for some, you know, if you are looking for a straightforward black metal experience, but, like, just with a little bit more seasoning, you know? Like, you want a good, clean, basic hamburger, but you want some funky sauce thrown on top, you know what I mean? Next up, we have Crown of Thorns, brand new full-length studio album from Swedish mellow death underdogs The Crown. They may not have ever enjoyed the exact same levels of hype and influence and acclaim and popularity and success that the likes of Arch Enemy, At the Gates, and Flames, and Amon Amarth may or may not have enjoyed over the course of the past 25, 30 years or so, but to the Crowns' credit, they've been the most consistent, I feel, of all of these bands. They've never stopped going, they keep pumping out killer records, and this killer record is no exception to the rule. Just good, lean, clean, mean, badass, in-your-face, visceral melodeath with lots of bite, lots of blood, lots of energy and momentum, lots of dark, brutal spices and flavors thrown into the mix all throughout, some darker shades, some more triumphant guitar hooks, some more regal solos as well. Really great job of maintaining, like, that initial adrenaline all the way through as well. Like, it's just a hype, energetic, hard-hitting melodeath record from a band that, you know, never really got the recognition that they probably deserve, but hopefully that will change soon, eventually. If not, the Crown are clearly happy doing what they're doing, and more power to them. Keep on going, guys. Great record. If you love classic melodeath, this is for you. Next up, we have Omniverse Consciousness, the debut full-length studio album from Dodheimsgard, which is a spin-off of Dodheimsgard, and in fact, this debut album is a companion piece, a counterpart, a sibling to Dodheimsgard previous studio album, Black Medium Current, released last year. I gave it a 5 out of 5. It was one of my favorite albums of 2023. A fairly intriguing, interesting, unexpected move to release a companion piece to an album you released a year ago through a spin-off project, especially when this spin-off project is somewhat ironically more in line with what Dodheimsgard were doing before Black Medium Current. Like, it does feel like a return to that more eclectic, brazen, kind of electronics-heavy, avant-garde black metal sound. But hey, you know what? Fuck it. Whatever avenue brings me to sick, cool, weird tunes, I'm fine with. And this album is chock full, rich and aplenty of exactly that. It's a very sinister and unorthodox record that taps into the classic energy of black metal while still maintaining like the weirdness and the bizarreness of like a great avant-garde metal record. I don't really see how exactly it connects to Black Medium Current. I mean, they're both weird, I guess, but they're weird in different ways and for different reasons. Whatever, but I mean, aside from that, I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying this return to, I guess, more traditional Dodheimsgard-esque material, if you can even call it that. I almost reviewed this album, and I think had I done so, we'd be looking at a pretty strong 4 to 5, Very cool record. Next up, we've got a debut self-titled album from 7 Hours After Violet, kind of a new metal, metalcore, alternative metal fusion crew of sorts. Also, a supergroup, a fairly funky and eclectic one at that. A bizarre lineup here, to be honest. You've got Josh Johnson and Morgoth Beats from Winds of Plague. Worth noting, Morgoth Beats has also produced and written hit records and songs for Machine Gun Kelly, Suicide Silence, Polyphia, Lil Xan, Juice WRLD, Issues, the list goes on and on. You also have Taylor Barber from Left to Suffer on vocals, Alejandro Aranda, who was the runner-up on the 17th season of American Idol and also performs music under the name Scary Pool Party. I don't know what the fuck. And rounding out the whole thing on bass guitar, Shavo from System of a Down. Definitely a bit of a weird lineup for sure, but I think it mostly works out for 7 Hours After Violet. Like, they do a good job at pooling all of their different influences and different things that they've kind of been a part of into something that is cohesive and has energy and momentum. It's moody when it needs to be. It's very hard-hitting and brutal when it needs to be. It kind of matches the spirit of, like, early Deftones at times. It also has the bombast occasionally of, like, modern-day Slipknot. It has ambient moments. It has more depressing moments. In the opening cut, it's got, like, some tribal percussion and chanting vocals. It almost brings to mind, like, traditional Armenian Middle Eastern music of sorts. It's solid. It's not really something I'm going to be coming back to pretty often, but I did enjoy it while it was on, and I do look forward, honestly, to seeing this band expand their horizons and refine their sound in the future. Like, I feel like they could be onto something here. Like, this has the potential to be a lot bigger and a lot crazier. Next up, we have Anomalous Abstractigate Infestesimus. What does that mean? I've no clue. Brand new album from underground cosmic technical death metal crew Gigan. This one came out of the blue for me. I had no idea this album existed. I learned about it through a community post for Metal Trenches. So shout out to Metal Trenches for like kind of putting this out there, for making me aware of this thing's existence. These guys just have a knack for creating dense, thick, towering walls of like sci-fi influenced technical avant-garde death metal, just bonkers, unorthodox, jagged stuff. You have these dissonant sections, you have these brazen, insane pyrotechnics. The whole thing just kind of sounds like a creature from another dimension, literally trying to assault your mind. And this album is no exception to the rule. Another massive display of Gorgutsian or artificial brain-esque metal madness. Lots of wild, twisted, churning guitar pyrotechnics and riffs and beat downs. Lots of monstrous and genuinely insane, like, guttural vocal attacks. It's weird and demented and a little bit fucked in the head with tons of, like, cosmic flavor and vibiness, I guess. If you wanted, like, a more, like, brutal tech death equivalent to something like the most recent Blood Incantation record, you're kind of in the right ballpark, I guess, with this. Great record, in my opinion. I wish I could have squeezed it in for a full album review, but hey, that's how it is. October's busy, October's crazy, and I didn't even know about it up until, like, super recently, so shit happens, whatever. At least I can tell you about it now. Check out Gigan. Check out this album. Very underrated band, making really crazy shit. You're gonna love it. Next up, we have Terrified of God, brand new sophomore studio album from Vomit Forth, and I'm digging it, man. It's got some sick, gnarly, gross, stupid moments. It's hard, kinda hype. Definitely a big improvement production-wise from the debut Seething Malevolence as well. I mean, that album was just so overblown, so compressed, and it just constantly sounded like the audio was clipping and falling apart even on a super low volume. It made so many of those like killer, ballsy, groovy riffs so full of like fucking heart and stupid brutality. It just made them like incomprehensible, like they were just swallowed whole by garbage. This, by comparison, is a lot more clear, a lot more punchy, a lot more transparent. The riffs do have a nice, crisp and crunchy sound and feel and texture to them. The drums are sharp, but not overwhelming or overpowering. The same goes for the vocals as well, like deep, bellowing, monstrous guttural vocals. The songwriting, too, overall is a little bit more varied. Nice contrast between these slower, slammier, stewier sections and also, like, more groove-laden, kind of, like, brutal death metal. Love the use of like pinch harmonics and like squealing guitar tones all throughout, often contrasted with like the really slow kind of hard-hitting grooves, almost giving this like a knock-loose, beat-down, hardcore kind of vibe and feel as well. And it just has this really evil, dark, menacing, bloodthirsty presence and feel. Granted, so too did the debut, but now you can really feel it. Like, it's really there. It's really in your face. It's better realized, better fleshed out, just a solid improvement all the way through from start to finish. I enjoyed it, honestly. If you're looking for some dark, demented, brutal death metal, but with a little bit more dimension than maybe you're used to, then check it out, man. It's sick, it's gnarly, it gives you what you want, plus a little bit more. Next up, we have Emerald Fires Atop the Farewell Mountains from Cosmic Putrefaction. What an awesome fucking name. Right off the bat. Like, one of the coolest album titles I've heard all year. That's fucking dope. That's crazy. And guess what? Unsurprisingly, so too is the album. I think a lot of people were actually disappointed that I didn't give this a full album review, and I mean, I can see why. Crazy, fantastical, over-the-top, technical death metal, but with like a lot of like good, strong, bold melodies and like all of this like wild atmospheric shit. It's dense, it's massive, it has cinematic grandiosity to it, a wild and unpredictable record, and it's also a lot. Like, I found I had to take breaks throughout listening to this thing. It was a slightly overwhelming record in my opinion. Like, it's a bit much, but it is nevertheless entertaining in its too muchness. Like, I never felt repelled by it. Like, I was like, oh, I need to step away. Like, I still wanted to come back into it. I think had I gone ahead and given this album a review like a lot of people wanted me to, we'd be looking at a very strong and solid 4 out of 5. I think in the future, I would recommend to Cosmic Putrefaction we explore the possibility of a cleaner, less overwhelming sound and presentation. We maybe exercise a bit of restraint in some parts here and there, but overall, I mean, it's an exhilarating and wild and dramatic display of insane death metal, and I think a lot of people are going to really dig this. Next up, we have Burning in Celestial Poison, brand new sophomore album from Black Curse, garish, ugly, sinister, hellish, blackened death metal. This just sounds like evil and the fires of hell in sonic form. A ravenous, ruinous, brutal display, nice raw production that still gives enough clarity to the riffs and the drums to really give it as much oomph and impact as possible. A variety of agonizing screams and wails and tones all throughout the record just makes this sound like it's constantly crying out in pain. And the fact that like more than half of the album, realistically 3/4 of it is just like these 3 mammoth-sized 10-11 minute numbers filled with like all these varied riffs and vocal dynamics and like percussive beatdowns and assaults and just hellish, angry, brutal sounds, and it's not repetitive, it's not tiring. Such an impressive feat. One of the most full-on evil and uncompromising blacker death metal records I think I've heard this year. Absolutely insane, absolutely crazy. Had we not done the Thralls of Metal collab, this probably would have gotten review, and in that scenario, a very strong 4 out of 5. Like, this thing is a beast. this thing goes crazy hard. Next up, we have Suffer as One, the debut full-length studio album from death metal supergroup Living Gate, featuring members of Yob, Amen-Ra, Oathbreaker, and Weejdud. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce their name. Very stark, epic, ritualistic black metal of sorts. Very like, ooh, harrowing and spooky. If you had told me, if I didn't know any better, and you had told me that these people would be pooling their resources together, my immediate thought would be like, oh my god, we're about to get one of the most devastating, heart-wrenching, like blackened, sludge doom post-metal records ever made. Like, this is about to be we're on the verge of some truly insane shit. I would not have believed that they were making death metal, but they are. And I'm happy that they are, because honestly, this is awesome. Like, this is crazy. Love the different variety of, like, churning technical riffs and displays. Love that it's got this really clean, organic, full-bodied, like, classic death metal sound and feel. Tons of slimy, earthy bass licks, tons of super fast-paced guitar riffage. Just a really fun, really sick, really brutal record all the way through. Another album that I would have honestly liked to have done a full review for. Had I done so, very strong 4 out of 5. Next up, we have A Leap into the Dark, brand new EP from Enforced, American thrash metal crew. Probably one of the most authentic and exciting kind of like thrash metal bands out there right now, just doing that really old school sound, but as heavy and as real and as grisly and brutal as possible. I will say, I think the EP format overall works really well for Enforced because, I mean, their music is so fast-paced and so energetic and so intense that it gets very tiring and a little overwhelming pretty quickly. It doesn't help that thrash is a pretty stale genre when it comes to songwriting and songcraft, so this EP format where you can get in and get out, great idea. Enforced should unironically do more EPs in the future. But sonically, this doesn't have the dimension, the gravity, the heft, the brutality, the rawness of War Remains. It opts for something a little bit more clean, a little bit more direct, a little bit more stripped down, which I don't hate, but I don't know if it really works for this and like the type of thrash that Enforced do. But even if this EP doesn't kick the same amount of ass as other Enforced releases in the past, nonetheless, still a fun little appetizer of gnarly thrash metal. And as any EP should do, it has me salivating and hyped as fuck for the inevitable studio album that will probably be arriving sometime within the next year. Next up, we have another EP, this time from technical progressive death metal crew Entheos, entitled An End to Everything. Musically and emotionally, it feels like we're just picking up right where Time Will Take Us All dropped us off back in 2023. Very heartfelt, moody vocal performances, great use of clean vocals, contrasted with more abrasive, dry gutturals, and plenty of like gnarly, jagged, technical and progressive death metal still all through. Tons of battering, punishing, agonizing assaults, and fun, sparkly, tech-deaf pyrotechnics. Honestly, just a really great EP from start to finish. Action-packed and filled with detail and emotion and heart. I'm not sure if this was like written in a vacuum by itself and then released as a standalone EP, or if this stuff is left over from the Time Will Take Us All album. Whatever the case, it fits in nicely with the themes and the sounds and the ideas of that album. Like, you could do a deluxe edition and just staple these two together and I wouldn't have questioned it. Next up, we have Songs Against Humanity, brand new full-length studio album from German death metal crew The Spirit. I really like how it blends blackened textures and ideas and influences, like a lot of melodic ideas. I like how it blends like doomy vibes. I like how it brings in more technical, jagged, even progressive arrangements and riffs all together into one cohesive, nihilistic, semi-cosmic death metal experience. It's very grand and big in size and scale with a lot of emotion, very nihilistic, misanthropic lyrics as well, introspective shades and flavors thrown into the mix as well. Very cool, interesting stuff here. One of the PR guys was really pushing for this, really hoping I was going to do a full-blown review. Unfortunately, that obviously did not happen. But had I done so, boom, another pretty solid 4 out of 5, maybe leaning slightly towards a 3.5 out of 5, but a 4 nonetheless. Really cool stuff. Definitely check it out. Next up, we have Kinship, brand new full-length studio album, the sophomore, in fact, from technical, progressive, melodic death metal crew Ioottun, not sure how their name is pronounced. I didn't really get to spend a lot of time with this record. I basically just listened to it, right before doing this video. So it's hard for me to, give you, a detailed analysis of this, but I can tell you that it's a massive record in size and scale. I can tell you that it's very bombastic with a very theatrical, dramatic flair, huge in size and scale and scope. It's very cinematic, and it's to the point of almost being overwhelming, much like the aforementioned Cosmic Putrefaction record. However, unlike the Cosmic Putrefaction record, it does benefit from having a cleaner and more polished and more glossy sound. There's undeniably some really magnificent, dazzling stuff here. Great musicianship. I mean, especially if you're a guitar nerd. If you just want to hear some wild guitar melodies and pyrotechnics, you're going to be head over heels in love with this fucking thing. This is definitely a record I feel I need to spend a little bit more time with, but I will say right off the bat, based on what minimal experience with this that I have, if you like your fucking metal to be big and flamboyant and crazy and filled with wild solos and shit, then boom, this is for you. Straight the fuck up, this is the album you've been waiting for. It would not shock me if this topped at least a couple of top 10s at the end of the year. And finally, let's start wrapping things up. Thank God I've been here for far too long. Within the jaws of bereavement, brand new full-length studio album, the sophomore, in fact, from Maul. I enjoyed 2022's Seraphic Punishment, nice, hearty, old-school death metal worship with some more twisted, cavernous flares and such, some more absurd flavors and textures. In the Jaws of Bereavement is interesting because I feel like they're pulling a lot more from deathcore now, with some of these different grooves and some of these different slams and beatdowns, and I mean, even bringing in, Vincent Bennett from the Acacia Strain. But I'm kind of fucking with it. It's erratic and brutal still when it needs to be and wants to be. It's got some hefty, hearty grooves and breakdowns. I like some of the slower sections as well because combined with these atmospheric touches and flavors and these old school death metal influences, it gives it a very consuming, massive feel. It almost makes me want to see Maul go into a Death Doom direction in the future. Interesting mix of sounds and ideas for sure. I would say that some tracks do feel a little bit underdeveloped, a little bit undercooked. Overall, though, a pretty cool, fun record. I like seeing Maul try some new things and get heavier and get a little funkier. Looking forward to seeing what they do next. It's a fun record. Not perfect, but a fun record. And voila, there you have it. Yes, I know that there are probably a billion other albums that I missed in the month of October 2024, but cut me some fucking slack. It was a busy, crazy month. Tell me all about the albums that I missed in the comment section below. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Boom, videos, wow. Join me on Discord. I am going to go outside. I've been sitting here for far too long. Cheers and happy Halloween, everybody. Yeah, I need fresh air and sunlight so fucking bad. Holy shit.